seeing characters like Pleakley from a young age kind of gave me this messaging that being feminine is cool, being feminine's okay. Sharpay Evans is such a gay icon. Sharpay was like, she was camp, she was sassy, and she was unapologetically herself, you know? And queer people, we eat that up. This child has 2 mums. It's just not even a big deal, and I love that. Hello everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you're all well, safe, hydrated, well rested, and looking after yourself and all of that. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jord. This is the Winning Side podcast. Thank you for joining me. And for those of you who do know me, hey, what's up? Happy Tuesday or happy Thursday. I feel like I may just have to change my day to Thursday because Tuesdays just aren't working. It's nice to see everyone. Hope you're well. Don't think I doubt the weather's very nice at the moment. I feel like as we're in October, I can't imagine it being too warm. But you know, we have been quite lucky for quite a while. Like we've had like probably the best weather for a long term for a minute. So we need to be grateful, really. Guys, I'm so excited. So I'm doing a podcast. On how Disney has helped my queer awakening. Now, I feel like I don't need to explain what Disney is, but obviously Disney is a distribution, a company, a channel which showcases a load of amazing TV shows and films. Yeah, and it was really monumental to my childhood, really significant. It's so interesting because I remember when I was a kid having, I don't know if this is different in the States, I'm just talking from a UK perspective, having Disney Channel was a real luxury because those channels were like premium, like a bit more expensive. But like as like coming from like a working class background, my mum really wanted me and my brother to have something like a treat of some sort, and our treat, if you will, was to have like the top TV box, so to have like Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, sport channels, movie channels, and all of that. And yeah, like I guess I'm grateful because it really subconsciously it really helped my awakening. And I think without even like, I think obviously like I feel like I've always known that I'm queer, or always known that I'm different at least. You know, and that's through relatability to characters, through like coding, and through escapism. I think that's the main core thing, right? Disney gave me a lot of escapism as a kid. It was my comfort for a really long time. And you know what? I feel like I'm going through a bit of a recent I don't know if it's as far as a rediscovery, but a recent journey where like I actually watch Disney stuff to reminisce. Like I binged all 3 Lilo and Stitches last week. I was feeling quite sorry for myself, and I had I always have work to do, but I thought, okay, let me give myself the afternoon and the evening off. So I did, and yeah, I just sat on my sofa, sunk into it, and just watched Lilo and Stitch. How many Lilo and Stitch films are there? I tried watching the live action one, but it wasn't for me. But I love the animated ones, and they've got quite a few, haven't they? It was my comfort. It was my escapism. It was something I would look forward to, you know? Like I used to like get home from school and like Disney Channel would be like my go-to, or like when like a new show or new film would be released. I feel like that's probably like the first and the last time when like I was really anticipating a release. I remember that like films would come out, when a film would get released, there'd be so much promo, so much advertisement, and it would always come out at like 5 or 6 p.m. on a Friday evening. This is before things would get released at the same time or a similar time. Like a show or a film would be distributed or released in the States, but wouldn't get released till like months later. And obviously, thankfully, because I didn't grow up in a time when social media was so 24/7, so prominent, so ongoing, even if you were like actively online, you wouldn't know what you're missing. Whereas now, if it was still to be the case where UK had a delay with picking up films and shows, you'd see it all over TikTok, so it would be spoiled already, especially if you like watched like a prequel and you were like aware of it, you know? The best way is probably to start with like my crushes, you know. And it's so interesting because like, as a queer kid growing up, sometimes you kind of struggle to distinguish the difference between liking a character or relating to a character or fancying a character. Like as a kid, I really fancied the Sprouse twins. You know, I really fancied the Sprouse twins. I really fancied Jake T. Austin. I really fancied Corbin Bleu. I feel like Disney, I feel like Disney has like sold me a bit of a lie, because for the longest time ever, Disney Channel, Disney, they made it out that Zac Efron was like the finest thing on the block. But sometimes when I look back, I think, why was the energy not given to Corbin Bleu? Corbin Bleu was and is absolutely extremely tasty. You know, he's so gorgeous. I don't know if, let's not deep it into like a race thing or anything like that. But like, I don't know. I find it, when I look back now, I think Corbin Bleu was so handsome. He was so cute. But I feel like the energy was just so centered and preoccupied with Zac Efron. He just was never given a look in, you know? But yeah, when I rewind and I think back to my crushes, I think of the Sprouse twins, particularly Dylan. I think that's because of like Dylan's character as Zac is a lot more cheeky chappy, is a lot more mysterious, a lot more adventurous, I guess. Whereas Cole, who plays Cody, is a lot more in check, a lot more well behaved, you know. And as cute as the geek aesthetic is, I guess I'm more leaning towards a bad boy, you know. And then again, like same with Jake T. Austin, when he played Max in Wizards of Waverly Place, he was very silly, very playful. I don't know, and it was so interesting because like, I feel like at the time when I would watch these boys on shows and like be like obsessed with them, I'd be like, oh wow, like they're so cool. But really, it was like I actually fancied them. I actually wanted to kiss them. And it's this, do you know, it's the same way around with female characters, right? Because you know, like where you have it, where like as a young queer guy, you're like really like obsessed or fixated on women. And again, I think like when you haven't necessarily established or navigated your queer identity, you see it as a crush. I'm like, yeah, when I was like 7 or 8, I was obsessed with Miley Cyrus. I was obsessed with Selena Gomez. I was obsessed with Demi Lovato. But then as I grow up and I clock onto it, I'm like, do you know what? I liked them. I liked them as people. I didn't fancy them, you know? But I guess that kind of leads on to my point about the idea of how I feel like I naturally gravitated to films and shows with female protagonists. You know, when I watched Disney as a kid, naturally I was more gravitated towards female protagonists. And I think that has something to do with like the idea of femininity and feminine energy. You know, this idea how for a lot of queer people growing up, femininity and feminine energy feels quite safe. So when you have these characters on Disney who are hyper femme and very engaged in feminine energy, you naturally feel driven to that and you feel comfort, and like that's why you watch the shows, you know. And then when for example, obviously, like I know it's only a character, but like Raven Baxter is a very feminine character, you know. So the Cheetah Girls, so is Hannah Montana. Even like the films like Camp Rock and High School Musical, with the excessive choreography and the dance routines and the jumping into song, it provides a level of comfort, you know, having this production which is very camp and flamboyant, you know. And I guess you can kind of say it provides a level of safety. And sometimes it can kind of be low-key queer-coded. Like there are so many like theories, and obviously theories are quite fun because some of them are just so out of touch. But there's so many theories that go around about these shows. Like there's a scene in High School Musical 2 where Ryan wants Chad to dance in the competition at the place they're all working at, right? And then like after they've done that like really camp like performance. I don't dance, no. Hey, bada, bada, hey, bada, swing. I just got to do my thing. Afterwards, when they're like having a debrief, you can actually see they've changed clothes. And people are like, oh, that's a bit weird. And then there's also been loads of theories that like the way that like Sharpay is so horrible to Gabrielle, it's actually because Sharpay likes Gabrielle. Like Gabriella, sorry. Like Sharpay doesn't like Troy, she likes Gabrielle. But I don't think whether these theories have any substance, I don't know. But like it's still fun to play with. You know, I have to say that, and sometimes, like I said previously, I feel like because I like as a camp flamboyant queer man, I loved having these feminine characters to relate to. You know, it was really refreshing, and it kind of gave me hope, even though these characters weren't male. For the most part, I mean, I guess Ryan's a good example. To be fair, Ryan was very flamboyant and very expressive, and he was loved. I think that's probably the reassuring part. Being able to be flamboyant and being able to be camp and still being loved. You know, when you see the way that Ryan is appreciated and adored by his peers, by his family, by his sister, sometimes it kind of like subconsciously communicates to me, okay, I can be flamboyant, I can be camp, and that's okay. You know, if a show, if a channel, if a film that has so much leverage and so much attention is given the allowance to be the way it is and still be celebrated for being their natural true self, there is no reason as to why I cannot be and do the same, you know? But I have to say that, honestly, Sharpay Evans is such a gay icon. Sharpay Evans is such a gay icon. When you look back at it, you actually kind of relate to Sharpay. I kind of relate to Sharpay. Sharpay was like, she was camp, she was sassy, and she was unapologetically herself, you know? And queer people, we eat that up. Well, we as queer people growing up and trying to figure things out, we live through characters like Sharpay, you know, like this feminine demeanor, you know, this carelessness, this determination and authenticity to be your true self without actually really caring what anyone thinks. It's admirable, it's respectable, and it's aspiring, you know. And I think that's why we, as queer people, have grown up appreciating and loving female characters, you know? And it's very open to interpretation, because you could also, I think Hannah Montana could be a really good example, you know? Living a double life, you know? I think a lot of queer people, like, in their teens, before coming out, they feel like they're kind of like living two different lives. And that can be people that are out to their friends and out to their family, or maybe meeting guys on the down low. I feel like in my experience, everyone's different, obviously. I came out when I was 18 years old because I had to. Like, I was just like, I want to date men. And I'm not very sly. I'm just not a very sly person. I wouldn't have got away with it. I think I did bits with like a school friend when I was 17, and that must have been about probably just over a year before actually coming out. But I was just like, I don't know, I don't respect DL men, but like I do sometimes think, how do you get away with it? Because I'm just not sly, and I would have just got caught. But I don't know if that's because I have like really nosy people in my circle, or because I'm just a bit of a klutz, a bit clumsy. Probably a bit of both, to be honest. I feel like if you're in your mid-20s, you definitely lived in the best Disney era. Disney really isn't Disneying like the way it used to. Like, I don't think actually, like, I feel like next to none, I feel like most Disney shows are animated. Disney Channel's dying, you know? It's quite sad, actually. I feel like I definitely lived like in the best era. I'm so grateful that my parents wanted to have a baby in May 1999, you know, because we having like Hannah Montana, Wizards, Sunny, Raven. But I feel like also at the same time, right, I feel like Disney is like one of those ones where like it makes you kind of makes things feel a bit unrealistic. Like, you know how like a lot of the shows are like centered around like but genuinely around like fame, That is the core focus and the core achievement, isn't it? To be famous or to be in a creative field, you know. Maybe that's what maybe that encouraged me to like unleash my creativity. I don't know, but yeah, I definitely lived in like the best Disney era, and for that I'm very, very grateful. Very grateful. I feel like there's also like kind of previously said, there's all within Disney, there's also like a lot of like hidden coding. And I don't know if this is like subconsciously done or if it's just like a way of being interpreted. But either way, I enjoy how that provides comfort for queer people. Because when I was doing some research, I thought, okay, let me have a browse into what people are thinking. And there's certain things that were kept on recurring whilst I was doing my research. One thing was Elsa from Frozen, and the whole like concept of like letting it go. And apparently, I haven't seen Frozen 2, but people say that Elsa is a gay character. I don't actually know if that's true. There's been a lot of theories, but whether that's true or not, I actually don't know. And the idea of like letting it go is like letting go your concerns, your worries, your cautions, and then embracing your inner self, you know. That can be like very not even subconscious, that can be like very conscious direct messaging to queer people, to be like, look, like, and again, it's the comfort of Disney, right? This idea of magic, this idea of achieving your wildest dreams. It's very much like let it go, your concerns, and just embrace yourself. Because it is hard. Navigating queerness can be really difficult for so many circumstances and so many reasons. But it makes you think, okay, at what point do I get to where I'm just very much like, I don't care anymore, you know? Because I feel like, and that's why I'm so heartbroken by the fact there are so many people who are queer and still aren't out. I've known people in their 30s who are queer and aren't out. And I just think, what kind of life is that? You know, obviously I get there are circumstances as to why it can be difficult, but I think, I don't know, I'm really enjoying, not really enjoying, I like the idea that queer people have like interpreted this differently to the initial depiction, and that's what I mean. But maybe that's what it means, but because it's Disney, obviously they have to be quite, what's the word? I guess cautious with messaging and stuff, even though like straight couples have been like broadcasted since the beginning of time and no one bats an eyelid about that. But hey, what can I say? I think also in Disney there's this concept of the idea of chosen family, where like naturally characters may not be bonded by blood, but they have a alternative connection. And I think that's another thing which I can really relate to as a queer person. The example I thought of initially was Lilo and Stitch. Now, Lilo and Stitch is really interesting. I love Lilo and Stitch Down. Great film, wonderful meaning. And obviously, Stitch has been created for evil purposes, right? So Stitch does not have an actual quote-unquote family, you know? He doesn't even realize what he lacks until he meets Lilo, right? And then obviously when it hits the fan and the film ends, the councilwoman is saying how Stitch has to return to space, and then Stitch is basically saying he's found his family, you know. And that can be, I mean, again, probably not directly, but that can be another subtle queer undertone of the idea of how chosen family is so significant for queer people. As queer people, a lot of the time we tend to have chosen family, especially if you're as a queer person, right, and you don't have anyone in your close circle who's queer. Like I have another queer family member, but with love to them, they're not in close proximity. So, you know, and I think I pull it upon myself to actively find people who are like me, to find people with similar experiences. And okay, that isn't the same for Lilo and Stitch in the sense, because Lilo and Stitch aren't similar, but like, they both lacked something, you know. They both lacked a bond. They both lacked a friend. Well, Lilo lacked a friend, a best friend, and Stitch just lacked companionship at all, romantically or platonically. Do you know what? I like, to be fair, again, I think Lilo and Stitch also helped me embrace my femininity. So a really interesting example of something really substantial, really, and really like forward thinking with regards to queer representation, yeah, a really like clear signifier of queer representation from Disney in Lilo and Stitch is Pleakley. It's not really like certain or like very clear what gender Pleakley is, but the fact that they are able to switch to and from so fluently and no one batters an eyelid for something in the early 2000s is pretty remarkable. You know, seeing characters like Pleakley from a young age kind of gave me this messaging that being feminine is cool, being feminine's okay, being able to unleash feminine energy is acceptable, because it was pretty groundbreaking, to be honest. It was a time when the idea of going against tradition with regards to how you display yourself was a bit frowned upon, you know? And it's quite sad. Pleakley doesn't do drag in the new Lilo and Stitch, which I think is a real shame. And I think it was a real significant part of their characterization, you know? It was a really important part of their character building. So I feel like we've gone a bit backwards in that way, because I think for me personally, it doesn't make sense as to why that. I thought it was a really crucial part of their character, so it doesn't really make sense why that would be taken away from them, to be honest. But that's just my opinion. And then even like earlier on, we kind of have like snippets, like glimmers of hope, if you will, glimmers of hope that like showed queerness indirectly in Disney shows. So I remember two that come to mind. There's the one where there's two mums who are together on Good Luck Charlie. When there's two mums, Amy and Bob don't even like. It's so interesting, and it was quite refreshing at the time, because this is still like mid 2000s. So still, I don't even know, was gay marriage legal in America then? I don't think it was, to be honest. The idea, or like the realization that this child has two mums, it's just not even a big deal, and I love that. And there's like a really funny part where like Bob and Amy are going back and forth saying, I want to swap my mum, because I think they're like bonding individually, and neither of them are too keen, and they want to swap that mum for the other one. And I don't know, I just find it like really, it was just really nice and playful. There was no big deal made out of it. It was just really sweet. And I just thought, because obviously like like being gay or being queer, it doesn't have to always be. I mean, it can be dramatic. It can be over the top if people want it to be, but that doesn't need to always be the case. And I just really liked how they were like, "Oh, it's two mums. Okay, cool. I want to swap your mum. How's your mum going?" I just thought it was. I don't know. I love it. And then the other example I can think of is when Alex is bisexual, which is never like closely disclosed, and she is dating Stevie, who is played by Hayley Kiyoko. I'm not going to lie, I actually don't remember anything about this. Like, no, sorry, that's not true. I don't remember anything about the context-wise or the plot. I remember Harper being really jealous. I remember that much. I remember her like turning to stone, and then like I remember Alex getting like quite upset when she'd gone, like quite upset for a friend, but obviously that's because it was a girlfriend. But I think that was a time where unfortunately things were different, and you weren't allowed, which is interesting because this must have been before Good Luck Charlie, but I think they did it then where like it wasn't allowed to be so explicit, you know, like people knew they were a couple, but it wasn't allowed to be spoken about, which is such a shame, because that could have been so fun to play with. You know, that could have been really fun to experiment with, but unfortunately it just wasn't meant to be. But yeah, and like, again, that was groundbreaking. You got to think, because Selena is and was such a prime Disney star, for her to be on board with that is pretty extraordinary. Do you know what I mean? But I feel like, to be fair, all of those like main girls of that time, they're all very like heavy on like queer rights, that being Selena, Miley, Demi, Hilary Duff, Raven, you know, the girls. But I think Disney has always been quite good at having subtle levels of like characters being camp and flamboyant. I don't know if that's intentional, or I don't know if that's just like a thing that's like linked to their culture, or to like the characters, or characters that are inspired by whoever. Like in Little Mermaid, Ursula, I believe Ursula is inspired by drag queens, I want to say. I want to say that's the case. I could be wrong, but I think it's not. And then even like Jafar, he's quite expressive and quite flamboyant, you know? And I think, I mean, I've already said it really, but like, I think this really helped me more than I ever acknowledged at the time, you know? You don't know that you don't really know that you're queer when you're that age. You just know that you're somewhat different. And I'm grateful for it. I feel like it allowed, I think, multiple things. It allowed me to switch off when I needed to. It allowed me to relate when I needed to. Yeah, and it allowed me to, I guess, to think big, to dream big, to help me subconsciously acknowledge the fact that I can be flamboyant, I can be feminine, and I can still be loved and adored and appreciated and acknowledged without having to filter myself and having to minimize the way in which I move, you know? So I guess I'm grateful for Disney. I'm grateful for being young and alive in the time where it was at its prime. I don't think it's ever going to get better. I don't think people have the money. That's the vibe that I get when I was doing research. I don't think people have the money, because if they did, it wouldn't all be animated, you know? But I guess also the idea of Disney stars just isn't the same because of streaming, you know? Having an actual channel is very hit and miss. Unless you're like one of the main broadcast shows. I don't know what it is in America, sorry, but obviously in the UK we have like BBC, ITV, Channel 4. I don't know what it is in America. I'm so sorry. I should have done some research. But yeah, so for that I have to really like look back and appreciate it. But yeah. Okay, I really hope that made sense. I really hope that worked. I really hope it kind of I just hope it made some sense. If it didn't, I'm actually really sorry for wasting your time, but I hope it did. And I'm going to try and cut out the parts that didn't make sense because I feel like I repeated myself quite a lot. 37 minutes. Let's go. Okay. Thank you for watching, everybody. Have a great week. Party hard. Stay hydrated, moisturize your skin, and all the good things in between. My eyes are literally burning from this light. My name is Jord Hellwood, and this is the Winning Side Podcast. And I will see you all again very soon. Oh God, my eyes are burning. We need to stop. Okay, bye.